In 2023 alone, there were 2.52 million road accidents in Germany. The police officer will consider you at fault, even though it is not your fault. In 2024, road accidents caused 2,770 deaths. No one has analysed these problems, or if they did, they reached no correct conclusion. 365,000 injuries. But just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, I found something catastrophic. And among them, 50,600 serious injuries, many resulting in lifelong disabilities. Here, the sign warns of a dangerous left-hand curve, but the road curves right. The economic cost of road accidents in Germany reached 35.2 billion euros in 2022 alone. And throughout all this time, it seems that no one is responsible. And certainly, no one seems truly interested in road safety. You probably all trust the stamp, or the quality mark, made in Germany. Yes, Germany is the third largest economy in the world, after the United States and China, according to IMF and World Bank GDP estimates, and the strongest economy in the European Union. Yet not everything made in Germany is good or of high quality. And since we are on a road safety channel, we will analyze and talk about German engineering. While automotive engineering excels, road construction and traffic signage engineering is rudimentary. I believe road safety engineers are rather frustrated by the achievements of automotive engineers and intentionally sabotage years of their work, research, innovation, and testing. Praised for its precision and engineering excellence, Germany's roads tell a different story. Outdated road architecture, ineffective or completely erased markings in every town, missing, confusing, or contradictory traffic signs. What happened to the country of engineers? Germany is a road safety hazard. And even worse, Germany serves as a model for almost all EU countries, which copy German designs that are not only flawed, but pose major traffic safety risks. As for traffic flow, congestion, or the environment, let's not even get started. This video is not just an opinion. It is a documented account of a system stuck in the past, probably somewhere in the 1930s or 1940s. A prominent German expert, or a group of brilliant experts, reached positions high enough in the German state to abolish road markings inside towns at the federal level, meaning in all German states. By exception, markings remain where there are multiple lanes in each direction, but even there, the design of the markings leaves much to be desired. At night, in fog, rain, or snow, you cannot have reasonable visibility of the road, and an accident is never far away. Some markings have naturally worn away over time, like this pedestrian crossing. Yes, this is what a pedestrian crossing looks like in Germany in 2025. Zebra crossings are very rare in Germany because even zebras are disappearing, and as for signs warning drivers that pedestrians may be crossing, apparently they are considered unnecessary. Following the Russian model. If you find yourself in Germany or Russia as a pedestrian, be extremely careful when crossing the street. In places where the markings haven't worn enough, municipalities have found ways to hide them to comply with the absurd federal regulation. I received a response that shocked me. The federal regulation that eliminates road markings inside towns supposedly ensures that drivers will not exceed the speed limit and will drive cautiously. Completely false, gentlemen, experts in nothing. While engineers in the automotive industry spent time, resources, and technology to find solutions so that drivers wouldn't exceed lanes, veer off, or enter oncoming traffic, for what we now call keep lane assist, you have managed to cancel this progress. The keep lane assist system works correctly only where roads are properly marked. Without markings, the system calculates the distances to the edges of the road and will guide the car toward the center of the lane. Gentlemen experts, you have created a major traffic hazard. Many drivers will frequently cross the road's center line, especially in curves. And I don't believe any of the speed demons will slow down, as those who implemented the federal regulation dreamed. Theoretically, outside towns, German roads should be properly marked. This is what German road markings look like filmed with an old dashcam that doesn't process image quality. And this is what they look like when filmed with a high-end camera that processes image quality. Reality, seen with the naked eye, falls somewhere between these two images. What I want to emphasize is the poor retroreflectivity of German road markings, which is utterly unacceptable. For comparison, I won't go to Spain, where roads are perfectly marked and the reflectivity remains strong even when markings are worn. Instead, I will compare German markings with those of neighbouring Czechia, which look flawless. The retroreflectivity of their markings is excellent. If you were to compare the two quality standards, which one would you normally choose? Is it possible that Germans use Chinese paint? Ah, no. Chinese road markings and road design are among the best in the world. But it wouldn't be appropriate to talk about China in a documentary about German quality, would it? I've seen some people even compare cars made in the two countries. But maybe the Chinese use German paint. So then, what paints do Germans actually use for road markings? If anyone knows, write it in the comments. And to avoid seeming disrespectful, I should still mention that German road markings are retroreflective during the day, but only when the sun is shining brightly. The angle of retroreflection is wrong, so in the case of German markings, you get reflection, not retroreflection. Reflection occurs when a surface or object scatters incoming light in different directions and angles, while retroreflection occurs when a surface or object reflects incoming light back toward the light source. So, if German markings lack retroreflectivity and do not reflect light back to the car's headlights, they still produce a fairly strong reflection in sunlight. In other words, we have markings that are visible only when the sun is high in the sky. Now, I'd like to look at and discuss the meaning of these markings, because it's very difficult for me to orient myself and understand what road markings in Germany are supposed to communicate. Do the markings even say anything? Or are the roads just painted however the designer feels like it? The sign tells us that in 200 meters we will have a parking area. This refuge looks like a parking spot. I want to stop, but I hesitate because of the solid line forbidding me from entering the refuge. I drive a little further, and because I see the parking sign, I cross the solid line and park. Is it correct to cross a solid line in Germany? Or is this a parking spot for drones and helicopters? Are road markings mandatory, or are they optional? Moving on, we notice on the left a refuge with a bus stop sign. From what can be observed, the marking delimiting the stop is a thick dashed line with small gaps, similar to the dashed lines separating acceleration or deceleration lanes on highways and expressways, and also found at junctions and bifurcations. Is this how bus stops are supposed to be marked? No. On the right, we have the other bus stop, where a simple dashed line was used, like in parking areas. Not like the parking spots we just passed, but like parking markings in Europe or around the world. How many engineers worked on the road signage along this road? Did one team work on one direction and another on the opposite direction? And probably each team had its own whims, because this doesn't seem like a standard recipe for applying markings. At the end of the bus stop, there is an intersection. So we have a bus stop right at an intersection? On the side road, you can see the stop line, the thick line drawn on only half the width of the side road, indicating that traffic is allowed in both directions on the side road, right? Yes, we have a bus stop located at the intersection with a two-way side road. Very interesting. I've never seen a bus stop anywhere else in the world placed in an intersection. All this is made in Germany, not automotive engineering, but road engineering. A few kilometers further, we come across another bus stop marked with a thick solid line, similar to the stop line that should be present before every pedestrian crossing and at every intersection where stopping is required. 3 bus stops, 3 different markings. What are drivers supposed to understand from these markings? Which one is correct? Is there any standard, or does each engineer design whatever they want? Bus stops are the most vulnerable spots due to the presence of pedestrians or passengers waiting at the stop, or the bus departing from the stop. Elderly people, children, school kids, shoppers, who are focused only on the arrival or departure of the bus. Bus stops should be areas of maximum importance for designers, architects, traffic safety experts, and road police. But what do you make of these bus stops? No, these images are not from a horror movie or a crazy parody. These bus stops exist in Germany in 2025 and are used by people actually waiting for the bus. In these images, what do you see? Dirty roads? Yes, almost all roads in Germany are dirty, which seriously affects braking distances. No one seems concerned about traffic safety in the country of engineers. Excuse me. These scenes are from another film. Germany doesn't seem to understand the importance of clean roads, and the circulation of agricultural vehicles is tolerated, even on national roads. And here, what kind of marking is on the right side of the road? Do we have an acceleration lane on the right? Let's go back and see. No. The right lane starts here, which means the thick dashed line with small gaps could indicate a deceleration lane, a bifurcation, or an exit from the main road. Or not. Perhaps the right lane is a parking area. I know that the thick dashed line with small gaps usually separates a traffic lane from a deceleration lane, exit lane, bifurcation lane, or an acceleration lane, entry lane, or junction lane. If the thick dashed line with small gaps is also used for parking, does that mean it's allowed to park on the deceleration lane, exit lane, bifurcation lane, or on the acceleration lane, entry lane, or junction lane? Made in Germany. Furthermore, we can see that the solid line at the edge of the road blocks access to and from properties along the road, even where there are entrances to commercial areas. But let's see how others mark and delineate parking spaces. Confusing markings can lead to misinterpretation or delayed reactions, which can further lead to accidents because the driver will respond too late or incorrectly. Now let's look at the markings for bifurcations or junctions, for separating acceleration and deceleration lanes. On the highway, the markings are just as poorly retro-reflective. As you can see, they are barely visible during the day, and at night, it's night. The good part is that you can look at the stars, or maybe end up seeing green stars. And we've passed a highway bifurcation. Did you notice that? No? You couldn't, because you didn't identify the lane separation marking for the bifurcation. And if you realize too late that you're in the wrong lane, like here, it's very likely you'll jerk the steering wheel or the brakes, which is extremely dangerous on a highway. Here, the signs tell me to go straight to Nuremberg and right for Munich. But in reality, Munich is straight ahead and not to the right, while Nuremberg is to the left, which I didn't know because nothing informed me that a bifurcation with a left exit was forming, which is completely inappropriate for a highway. Our minds have been trained and taught that highway exits are always on the right, but some engineers far more insightful than I have built the exit on the left. Very clever, but unsafe. And now we are on the highway. I haven't seen any speed limit, but there's a dangerous right-hand curve, and those in the second lane, the left lane, will run out of road. Exactly what's needed to create a traffic jam at a highway junction. Now, are we on the acceleration lane, or the first lane of the new highway we just entered? Probably you didn't identify the junction lane separation marking here either, the one that separates the acceleration lane from the main traffic lane. Here, the junction is smooth. From 3 lanes, we expand to 5, then reduce to 4, without any specific markings. Now we position ourselves closer to the acceleration lane. Did you spot the specific markings to speed up and merge into the main traffic lane for those entering the highway? Did you notice the acceleration markings? No, neither did I. Let's look at the next bifurcation. The line marking the deceleration and exit lane is only slightly thicker than the lane separation marking, but the thickness of the longitudinal marking is not enough to firmly communicate the message that you need to make a quick decision, either continue on the main lane, switch to the exit lane, or if you're in the acceleration lane, merge quickly into the main lane. German road markings are hard to see and even harder to understand. You might say that every driver knows the steps to follow, but sometimes the human factor intervenes and things go wrong. At high traffic speeds, the consequences can be disastrous. Let's see what Germany's neighbors do. Poland. Czechia. Little sister Austria.
So high, I'm hypnotized.
France.
What's up is down, what's left is right. Chasing stars and holding you. I can't see the end, but we'll see it through.
And my beloved Spain. In this way, any driver, even a careless, drunk, high, nervous, euphoric, tired or depressed one, can easily understand that in areas with these markings, extra attention is required and lane changes must be executed carefully. This video from 2014 shows that the acceleration dashed line was clear to everyone. Now it is clear only that German road architecture has regressed. Why did German engineers extend highway markings all the way to parking lots? And yes, there are exceptions. I have encountered correct markings for acceleration and deceleration lanes at a few construction sites, in temporary markings, where responsible engineers probably set the correct lines. Now, things seem a lot clearer. What do you think? And since we're still on the highway, I want to emphasize that German engineers don't seem to consider it important for drivers to easily identify exits. Signs repeatedly announce upcoming exits, which is good, but at least for those who don't speak German or use the Latin alphabet, there are no clear references, and this also affects the concentration of German drivers. Normally, the exit number should correspond to the highway kilometer. Exit X represents the exit at kilometer X. Sometimes such numbering exists, but this communication is done only sporadically and chaotically, without assuming that Germans have any standard regulating this particularly important aspect. Sometimes the exit number is indicated at a distance of 2 kilometers, sometimes 1 kilometer, sometimes less, and often not at all. Sometimes the sign is placed above the highway, and sometimes on the right edge, and if at that moment you are overtaking a vehicle, it is possible to miss the exit and have to drive unnecessarily long distances to turn back or reroute. What is certain is that most of the time there is an indication at 300 or 200 meters from the exit, when it is already too late if you are in the second or third lane of the highway. Additionally, repeatedly marking exits with numbers is important because it reduces driver stress and cognitive load, especially given that internet navigation is extremely difficult in Germany. Mobile networks and internet are as poor as road signage. For me and for drivers from other countries, it is easier to plan the route using exit numbers. I drive on Highway 7 until exit 70, then I take Highway 15 and exit at exit 23 to soon reach my destination. With these reference points in mind, I won't have to remember the names of towns, sometimes with multiple exits. And for some towns, there are several exits and names that I won't retain when planning the route: Munich North, Munich East, Munich Industrial, and so on. At which Munich exit did you plan to leave? At the same time, if I know that I plan to take exit 70, I will know in advance that I am approaching the point where I need to prepare for the exit, following the previous communication, namely exits 69 and 68, which will warn me that I am getting close to exit 70, the desired exit. Now, because internet navigation works flawlessly, I have entered the exit lane. But since I don't know the length of the lane, I continue driving at highway speed without anyone telling me to slow down or by how much. The exit lane could be a connecting ramp to another highway. It could continue as a national road where I could drive at 100 kilometers per hour. Or I could enter a hairpin turn where a speed of 30 kilometers per hour is too high. That is why it is important for all drivers to be warned about the speed limit they must respect. Unfortunately, in Germany, these successive speed reductions do not exist, and many times drivers have either hit the guardrail at a junction or skidded or overturned. Speed reductions must also be correlated with the distance travelled, because countless times in Germany I have encountered a speed limit posted only at the beginning of a hairpin, which forces abrupt braking and increases the risk of skidding. Other times, German engineers calculated that reducing speed from 80 to 30 kilometers per hour could be done in a few meters. Many countries that respect road safety use speed limits on deceleration lanes. These limits are not for excellent drivers like you, but for less skilled drivers or those affected by the human factor you might encounter in traffic, and the result can be disastrous. But just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, I found something catastrophic. The 120 kilometers per hour speed limit applies to the exit lane as well, right? And I think about the headaches engineers in the automotive industry face when calibrating autonomous driving systems without the proper speed limit signs. And that's not all. I haven't finished analysing the exits and highway bifurcations. Without information on the correct speed limit, a bifurcation can be like a wall of death. The angle of these guardrails is extremely dangerous. In the event of an accident, it's even more hazardous than a perpendicular wall at the moment of impact. The bifurcation is marked with these left and right bypass signs, which are far too small for highway speeds. Other countries have installed bollards at bifurcations so that the split is clearly visible from a great distance. And the most safety-conscious countries also mark bifurcations with catadioptric reflectors embedded in the asphalt, eliminating any confusion or misjudgment by the driver. Accidents happen in a fraction of a second when driver judgment is delayed or incorrect due to insufficient, confusing, or contradictory road signage. The sign warns us of a right-hand curve, but the road actually curves left. Here, the sign warns of a dangerous left-hand curve, but the road curves right. Here we have a priority road sign and an additional panel indicating that the priority road turns left. In reality, the road turns right. Something is rotten in Denmark, something is rotten in Germany. It's your first time on this road and you are paying close attention to the street guidance. You see the traffic lights, you see the green light, you see the markings and the arrow on the traffic light, and you accelerate to catch the green. Both the directional markings and the traffic light tell you that you are on the lane going straight ahead. Will you continue straight or turn right? At 50 kilometers per hour, a vehicle travels a distance of 13.89 meters per second. The distance between the traffic light and the solid line of the curve is approximately 10 meters. Since I am a lawyer and mathematics is not considered my strong suit, I ask a German engineer in road design and safety to tell me how long it will take to hit the red car. Write your answer in the comments. Now I want to present a situation that I didn't understand very easily. Look at these signs on the right-hand side of the road. Signs are generally installed on the right side of the road, aren't they? No stopping. Tell me in the comments where you think the no stopping area is. On the left? On the right? Ahead? Behind? I am very confused. I want to know what you think about this German road signage. Probably the arrows on the no stopping and no parking signs will make you believe that the prohibition applies to the area indicated, on the left and or right side of the road. In all your previous experiences, whether in traffic or in society, you have learned that an arrow pointing up means straight ahead, an arrow pointing down means backward, an arrow pointing left means left, and an arrow pointing right means right. Well, in Germany, it's different. These signs are poorly installed if we consider German regulations or standards. Here the signs are correctly installed for Germany, but not for the rest of the world. No stopping or no parking signs are installed parallel to the axis of the road. You've never heard of that? Okay, look here. This is the German standard. The signs are installed in such a way that drivers cannot see them. They could just as well be placed parallel to the road axis but facing outward. Either way, no one sees them. How many of you look through the right-hand door window to see the signs? That's what you have to do in Germany. Now the arrows on the signs indicate the restricted area. To the right means backward, to the left means forward. Everything you thought was correct is false in Germany. For down, press the right button. For up, press the left button. Look at this alley. Can you stop here to go to an ATM to withdraw some cash? By the way, in Germany in 2025, you must always carry cash with you because very often you cannot pay by card, and often your Visa or MasterCard will not be accepted. Germans have POS systems that only accept German cards. Before refueling, it's wise to ask which cards the gas station accepts to avoid later inconvenience. If you stopped in this spot, you are at fault because the sign, which you couldn't possibly see, says stopping is forbidden. Practically, you would have had to travel a longer distance, look at all the walls on the left and right, and if you didn't find any restriction, reverse and stop. But on the motorway, is voluntary stopping allowed on a motorway? From the very definition of a motorway, we know that it is not compatible with voluntary stopping. Few people will notice such a prohibition. Most won't. Who could possibly notice these parallel signs while driving at 100 kilometers per hour? And if voluntary stopping is not allowed on a motorway by definition, what's the point of these signs? On a motorway, you can only stop in cases of emergency. Like this truck, which is stopped right within the action zone of these ridiculous signs. The truth is that I have never seen anywhere in the world signs installed parallel to the axis of the road. Signs must be installed at an angle of 85 to 90 degrees to the road axis, except for signs installed in curves, where the angle can be different. The installation of signs must provide drivers with maximum visibility, and they must not be shaded or hidden by vegetation or other constructions. But let's take a look at what the neighbors do in Austria. Czechia. Poland. France. Belgium. Why did the German engineers, specialists in road safety, choose to regulate such a totally inappropriate idea? It is still commendable, however, that German engineers have eliminated these laybys for emergency stops, which some drivers could mistake for rest areas or parking spaces. Italians still use them, and Romanians are now building them, despite the extremely high risks. A vehicle that intends to stop or park in these bays will have to brake too hard while still on the fast lane, endangering the traffic behind. And when re-entering the motorway, drivers won't use the emergency lane to reach cruising speed. They'll merge into the fast lane at a very low speed, creating an imminent risk for the vehicles approaching from behind. This is the acceleration lane marking, or the marking that separates the speed lanes from the exit lanes, in case you have not noticed the difference. If you merge onto the exit lane, you will very soon notice that the exit adds another lane. Most drivers will understand that at the end of the slip road another junction forms, where the right lane will continue to the right and the left lane will continue straight or to the left. But at the junction where the slip road meets the motorway, the lane marking on the right tells me to keep going straight ahead. This marking is very confusing, just a few meters before the sharp angle of the guardrails. How should I proceed at this point? Do I continue turning right because I am already in the exit lane, or do I continue straight? In either case, I am at risk. If I turn right, the driver in lane 1 could clip me. If I continue straight, I risk that the driver in the speed lane will not understand why I am continuing in the emergency lane or on the hard shoulder. Here, I leave the speed lane for the exit lane. Immediately, another lane forms on the right, but since I am already in the exit lane, I remain in this lane. And surprise, the exit lane 1 receives a solid separator line, which would be slightly clearer for the driver in the right lane and could understand that they cannot occupy my lane if they see the marking in time. For me, the marking is very confusing. The human brain can often be deceived by information like this because it refers to previously stored information from different environments. Most often, the brain will interpret lines as barriers or walls, and the open spaces as passage lanes. Look at this image. Are you sure these planes are oblique? That's what you thought, right? A few seconds have already passed, and you are still hesitating to say whether the planes are parallel and perpendicular, or oblique and irregular. In traffic, you do not have seconds or minutes to make a decision, because 1 second means more than 10 meters traveled. The continuation of the marking with a transverse dashed line across the lane can create confusion and delays in drivers' decision-making. Thus, in the first scenario, the markings with directional arrows are well placed, but in the curve, a solid line should have been added to clearly show the driver in the first lane that they must keep the right lane. For the driver in the second lane of the slip road, it would also be very clear that they can turn right without any obstruction if the dashed line marking did not cut across their trajectory. In the second scenario, the solid line appears too late, right in the curve, and those in the right lane of the slip road should have directional markings to warn them about the obligation to keep the lane and turn right. The thick dashed line markings present at intersections create the impression that they either delimit an exit lane or indicate a yield marking for vehicles from the secondary road, leading to the conclusion that the secondary road is a one-way street entering the main road. And you must always concentrate and look for additional references to know whether you can leave the main road without entering the opposite lane on a one-way street. The same occurs in roundabouts, where the yield marking blocks the exits. The main road has an absolute priority lane for straight and right directions, and a relative priority lane, where vehicles have priority in the straight direction, but must yield to those from the opposite direction when turning left. Thus, road markings at intersections must indicate restrictions, and exits from the main road should remain free and clearly signal the exit lane. Countries that stand out statistically for their concern for road safety use stop or yield markings in the corresponding travel direction, because these are always within the driver's field of vision. The communication of obligations is clear and exits from the main road remain free. These markings create lanes that are easy to identify for any driver. We remain at this intersection because I want to draw attention to a problem that can have serious consequences: the bicycle lanes at intersections. In Germany, cyclists have the same priority rules as trains or trams. At this intersection, if you have already positioned yourself for leaving the main road, the visibility angle in the right mirror will not allow you to see if a cyclist is coming from behind, after you have stopped and yielded to the cyclist within your field of view. Cyclists never stop and do not ensure whether they can cross an intersection safely. If you are driving a commercial vehicle without rear windows, you will not be able to check to yield to a cyclist who is traveling on your right and overtakes you. The general rule says that overtaking should be done on the left, but in Germany, in the way these lanes are designed, the cyclist behind your vehicle can overtake and get in front of you without you having seen them. Look at this intersection. After the traffic light turns green, vehicles turning right must yield to pedestrians, but also to cyclists. If a pedestrian moves at 4 to 5 kilometers per hour, a cyclist can reach speeds of 25 to 30 kilometers per hour, which means a pedestrian covers a distance of 1.4 meters per second, and a cyclist 8.33 meters per second. At this moment, at this angle, drivers of vehicles turning right lose visibility of cyclists who are moving and overtaking on the right, moving 6 times faster than a pedestrian. The accident is there, it hovers in the air, and it will happen in the critical second. Did you see the cyclist? No? They were there somewhere, but the sun and vegetation hid them. And yes, many super experts and know-it-alls will say that commercial vehicles without rear windows have mirrors for the blind spot. But I have already observed that more than 3/4 of the vehicles with this type of mirrors are not adjusted for the blind spot, but rather so the driver can see the side of their vehicle. You can check this yourselves at companies with large fleets of commercial vehicles. Even if the blind spot mirrors are properly adjusted, they show a reduced image, and in some cases it is impossible to see anything in them due to sunlight glare, shadow cones, raindrops or darkness. As for ADAS systems, which include blind spot monitoring, a system that signals the presence of cyclists on the right, I can only be grateful to the engineers in the automotive industry for their efforts. But less than 5% of the German national vehicle fleet is equipped with such devices, not to mention vehicles in transit. We are in a town. The roads are not marked according to the foolish federal rules, but there are bicycle lanes on both the left and the right. Germany has countless bicycle lanes, both urban and interurban. It was probably a competition for lanes funded with large budgets, and even if some, at least the interurban ones, are used very rarely, they are present everywhere. The width of this road does not allow 2 vehicles traveling in opposite directions to pass simultaneously, along with cyclists who use the lateral lanes for bicycles. As you can see, the road width forces vehicles passing each other from opposite directions to access the edge of the road, entering the bicycle lane. The center line of the road is not marked because, well, in Germany, roads in towns do not have to be marked, but the lateral marking of bicycle lanes can be fatal. Overtaking cyclists must be done while maintaining a minimum distance of 1.5 meters. The bicycle lane marking informs us that cyclists have their own lane and cars travel on the space designated for vehicles, which means there is no overtaking maneuver, but rather a passing maneuver. Well, the width of the bicycle lane, or bike path, is only sufficient to accommodate the width of the cyclist, without providing enough lateral distance to avoid clipping or destabilizing the cyclist. Sometimes a gust of wind can overturn a truck. For cyclists, it would be fatal if at that moment a car were to pass them. Few of the drivers who follow this route will consider it necessary to signal when overtaking cyclists, and even fewer will maintain the minimum lateral distance of 1.5 meters from them. Why do I have the impression that these bicycle lanes were designed by chefs or hairdressers? I simply cannot believe that a traffic safety expert or a design engineer could have put their signature on these projects that would destroy their reputation. And I am not done with the chapter on cyclists and bicycle lanes. We enter this one-way street. What does a one-way street mean? A street where traffic is allowed only in one direction. If there are cars parked on the right side of the road, traffic moves on the left side, and you will be surprised when you encounter vehicles traveling in the opposite direction. Yes, bicycles are vehicles, and the one-way rule should apply to everyone. But in Germany, you will encounter bicycles traveling against the flow, completely legally. Some people responsible for traffic safety have made it possible for bicycles to circulate in the opposite direction of one-way streets, and this happens all over the cities of Germany. Here, the acceleration lane marking is difficult to recognize. But if you do recognize it, it may give you the impression that it separates the lanes for right turns from those for left turns before a bifurcation. But no, we are not on a one-way street with 4 lanes. This 4-lane boulevard has an acceleration lane at the center of the road, and not a continuous line to separate the directions of travel. Unacceptable. If you exit from a driveway, you can turn left onto a busy 4-lane boulevard, or you can exit from the boulevard to the left, blocking the second lane of the traffic flow. Who said that the second lane is the high-speed lane used for overtaking? This is the solution found by German specialists for the convenience of residents to make U-turns, because Germans do not like roundabouts that allow residents to turn easily from one direction to another. Why do they not like roundabouts? This is a question to which I have not found an answer. A signalized intersection on 2 axes, with 2 lanes per direction and no left turn, can ideally handle a maximum flow of 5,700 cars per hour, whereas a roundabout with 2 lanes can handle a traffic flow of up to 7,500 cars per hour. A smart roundabout with 2 lanes can handle a flow of up to 14,400 cars per hour. I always ask myself, who are the people designing and approving German road architecture? The main objectives, safety and fluidity, seem to be completely ignored. Another question I always ask myself is whether Germany has built roads for vehicle traffic or for parking. While the definition of a traffic lane is intended for vehicle movement, in Germany, vehicles can park freely on any lane, even in parallel, while traffic is open in both directions. Made in Germany. In general, drivers have become accustomed to these parked vehicles and somehow give each other priority, even in difficult conditions. But during peak traffic hours, situations arise where it is impossible for a column of cars in one direction to make way for the column coming from the opposite direction. This not only causes traffic jams and delays, but also a lot of frustration, nervousness, stress, and sometimes accidents. All cities are suffocated by cars parked along the sides of the roads. The solution? One-way streets, which will prevent traffic jams, risks, and stress, while also increasing traffic flow. I am talking about fluidity. Another particularly serious and dangerous problem is that of right-of-way. In the year 2025 on planet Earth in Germany, intersections in residential neighborhoods are most often unmarked, where naturally you should give priority to vehicles coming from the right. If you somehow fail to notice, and most often you are tempted, at least at a T intersection, to believe that you are on the priority road, you are at fault and liable. Yes, in Germany you should stop at every intersection and check whether vehicles on the side roads have yield signs or not. If until now you have seen urban roads that do not allow two-way vehicle traffic because of parked cars, now we will analyze extra-urban roads that connect different towns or neighborhoods. Is this a one-way road? No, it is one of many roads in Germany that allow two-way traffic, even though the width of the road does not allow two vehicles to pass each other safely from opposite directions. Sometimes there are lateral markings, sometimes not, but there are never any markings for the road axis. Those markings that help you understand that you are occupying half the width of the road when you meet an oncoming vehicle, markings that force you to brake and adjust your speed for each situation. As a rule, there are no displayed speed limits on these roads, and when they exist, they seem to have been calculated by the neighbour's cat rather than by engineers, road safety specialists. When you encounter such a restriction, at what speed will you drive? With 50, with 40, with 20 kilometers per hour? Most likely not. And if the road tells you that you can drive at 70 kilometers per hour, it means the road administrator guarantees your safety at that speed. But this is not the case. While crossing this bridge, the two minibuses collided their side mirrors. While the two drivers argue to determine who is at fault, let us analyze the situation. The width of the bridge is less than 5 meters. It is impossible for two vehicles to pass simultaneously from opposite directions at a speed of 140 kilometers per hour safely. 70 plus 70 means a meeting or impact speed of 140 kilometers per hour. This accident is a fortunate case because the outcome could have been tragic. A few minutes later, the police arrived to report the accident and told me that accidents occur frequently in this area. But they could not explain why there is no central marking at the road axis, why there are no appropriate speed limits, and why right-of-way over the bridge is not regulated with specific signs. After my intervention, both drivers escaped without a fine, but I do not believe any measure was taken against the road administrator or even to remedy the deficiencies. More than 60 days later, I passed this bridge again, and nothing had changed. Perhaps a tragedy is needed, or skilled lawyers to force the road administrator to pay significant damages for something to change. We are on a national road outside a town. Normally the speed limit is 100 kilometers per hour. On this segment, we encounter a speed limit of 80 kilometers per hour, followed by an intersection with a secondary road that seems to be one way due to the yield marking across the entire width of the road. And then we encounter a speed restriction of 60 kilometers per hour. Next comes an intersection with a secondary road on the right, followed by a cross intersection, and at a distance of approximately 200 meters, we encounter the sign indicating the end of the 60 kilometers per hour speed restriction. What on earth was that? What did German experts tell me I should do when driving on this segment of road? Let's return to the 60 kilometers per hour restriction. I encounter the speed limit restriction, so I reduce my speed to 60 kilometers per hour. At the first intersection, let's assume a vehicle enters the priority road from the right, which does not encounter any speed limit sign. Being on a national road outside a town, it will be able to travel at 100 kilometers per hour. We cross the bridge, and at the next intersection, let's assume another vehicle enters the priority road, which after 200 meters encounters the sign indicating the end of the 60 kilometers per hour speed restriction. Obviously, the drivers of the two vehicles that entered the national road from the secondary roads can rightly ask themselves, which speed restriction did they actually violate? At first glance, it seems that the specialist who designed and installed this sign is a barber or a tailor. Who will the police radar crew sanction in case of a speeding violation at this point? Me, who assumed correctly that the speed restriction ended at the first intersection? The driver of the car entering the main road from the right, or the one who entered from the left? Those who entered from the secondary roads had no speed restriction, and those who designed and installed the road signage on this road segment did not realize that any restriction is effective from the place where the sign is installed up to the first intersection. Otherwise, those who enter the road segment later will have no restriction and will drive at the speed limits of a national road outside a town. You cannot punish someone who is unaware of the existence of a restriction. Check the provisions of paragraph 1 of the Traffic Offences Act. Gentlemen German experts, if you want to maintain a certain restriction beyond an intersection, you must communicate this by installing new signs after the intersection. You cannot place a speed limit in Berlin and expect drivers from Cologne to obey it. Every intersection cancels any restriction. That is why it is important to refresh the information with new signs placed on the next road segment. For this sign to be effective until the end of the restriction and to ensure a safe traffic speed, German experts and designers should have repeated the sign after every intersection so that all road users are aware of the restriction and adjust their speed accordingly. On motorways or expressways, the situation is even more serious. I start from the traffic light with the intention of entering the motorway. I encounter the motorway sign, which tells me that there is no speed limit unless other restrictions are in place. I enter the motorway, and from here can I accelerate to 100 or 200 kilometers per hour, even if it is a road under construction. Those supervising traffic safety apparently do not understand the risks of inappropriate speed and the dangers of missing road signage. I have already travelled almost 2 kilometers since entering the speed lane, and only here do I see the electronic panel with the speed restriction of 80 kilometers per hour. Let us go further to see if only at this entry the speed restriction signage is missing. We arrive at the next entry, and we can observe that here also there is no speed restriction, no speed limit sign. This means that both those who have just entered the motorway, as well as myself or those in the traffic flow, can accelerate to the maximum. In the absence of a speed restriction at this junction, all previous restrictions have disappeared. This junction has cancelled them. I do not believe this was an error, but rather a lack of competence. Neither German engineers nor traffic police supervising road signage understand where and when traffic signs are effective. In the absence of these speed limit signs, some sporty, reckless or inattentive individuals could cause accidents. Other times the signs are poorly installed, again from the same misguided perspective. Look at the priority road signs. Most often they are installed after the intersection, without German engineers taking into account that any rule is effective only from the point where it is installed and not retroactively. I repeat again, signs are effective from the place where they are installed and remain in effect until the first intersection, unless the end of the obligation is indicated by specific signs. Furthermore, the priority road sign should be accompanied by an additional panel showing which road has priority and which are secondary roads. This way, the driver gains a clear perspective of the route to follow, eliminating any confusion or misunderstanding. I believe it would be far more appropriate to use signs of this type, but Germany seems not to employ them. From what I see on Wikipedia, only the cross-intersection sign exists. And while on the subject of signage, Germany predominantly uses very small signs. If a post-it note can be easily read to remind you to buy milk, traffic signs must be of a sufficiently large size so that the sign can be easily seen in urban areas, rural areas, expressways or highways, taking into account the legal speed on that road segment. What is speed? Speed is the physical quantity that expresses the distance traveled per unit of time. For a driver to behave correctly, an average of 2 seconds is needed from the moment the driver identifies the sign until the reaction occurs. 1. Perception, meaning observing the sign. 2. Information processing, meaning understanding its meaning. 3. Decision, meaning determining what action to take. 4. Action, such as braking, changing direction, and so on. Therefore, traffic signs must be large enough to be seen, read and understood without doubt in a single second. Many countries use standardized sizes for signs depending on the road category, but it seems Germany does not. Urban-sized signs are used even in extra-urban areas, even though at 50 kilometers per hour a vehicle travels 13.89 meters per second, and at 100 kilometers per hour it travels 27.78 meters per second. Practically, the time for identifying, reading and understanding the sign is halved, and the reaction may be delayed, sometimes with fatal consequences. For directional signs, I believe there is a standard for the size of the sign, but not for the size of the font or letters. The height of uppercase letters is only 14 centimeters and only 10 centimeters for lowercase letters. This makes reading the signs difficult both during the day and at night, in rain, fog or other adverse weather conditions. While for urban traffic, where speed limits are lower, some signs can be read. For extra-urban traffic, reading the information is very difficult, especially when the sign contains a lot of information. And I have heard some people say that directional signs do not pose a traffic risk. Well, if I see and understand too late the direction I need to follow and brake abruptly from 100 to 20 kilometers per hour for a right turn on a national road, and you are behind me, you might not have enough space and reaction time, especially if you are tailgating the vehicle in front. Obviously, the police officer will consider you at fault, even though it is not your fault. Normally, no one expects sudden braking, especially on national roads. The color of the signs. Germany has chosen yellow for many of its directional signs. Because the font size of the letters is too small, at night under the headlights you will not be able to easily read the information, and at high beam the sign will blind you. After white, yellow is the most reflective color in the color spectrum. Typically, the signatory states of the Vienna Convention use blue for directional signs with white letters which are visible and provide contrast with the background. Also in Germany, we encounter these metal posts at many intersections, and I have always wondered what German engineers were thinking when they proposed this solution for protecting, or rather threatening, pedestrians and other road users. I invite you to do an exercise of imagination and answer for yourselves. What happens to these posts if they are hit in an accident? You have probably already visualized in your mind how they would fly like uncontrolled projectiles in any direction, and some of them are chained together. True weapons, probably designed to cause much greater and more serious damage in case of an accident. German engineers did not find safer solutions, even though plastic bollards with reflective elements are available worldwide. Any materials used in road construction or road design must be safe, tested and certified, and must not create risks or cause harm, even in the event of an accident. Plastic posts are a safe, cheap solution and within reach of any administration. And if we talk about pedestrian protection, let's return to pedestrian crossings, which I have mentioned before. In Germany, there are almost no pedestrian crossings as we traditionally know them, marked with signs and zebra stripes. Some road safety officials at Munich City Hall confirmed to me that there is still a silly federal regulation that eliminated zebra crossings in favor of invisible markings. A zebra marking 3 to 5 meters long is seen differently from the driver's eye level. The 3 to 5 meters have been reduced to just a few centimeters, and the broken line markings that are clearly visible from a drone are almost invisible from the driver's perspective, especially while in motion, where at 50 kilometers per hour, the vehicle travels 13.89 meters per second. The zebra crossing is meant to make the presence of pedestrians visible on the road, regardless of the time of day or weather conditions, even when the pedestrian's clothing is a color similar to that of the asphalt. These pedestrian islands, found throughout Germany, are not actual pedestrian crossings because they are neither marked nor signposted as such, and drivers seem to ignore them, or ignore pedestrians crossing the street at these locations. German drivers are more likely to give priority to other vehicles that do not have right of way than to pedestrians wanting to cross the street. Pedestrians are probably invisible. These pedestrian islands seem to have been invented by engineers in Switzerland, where they work excellently and, besides serving as pedestrian crossings, also help to streamline traffic. However, German engineers copied them incompletely, without understanding their purpose and advantages. Well, the Swiss are secretive and do not leave their secrets for anyone. As you can see, Swiss pedestrian crossings are well marked and signposted, and drivers give proper respect to pedestrians. At a classic pedestrian crossing without an island, drivers must wait for pedestrians to cross from one sidewalk to the other. These islands make it possible to reduce waiting times by a few seconds, and those seconds add up. At the federal level, Germany loses over €6 billion annually due to just 1 minute of daily traffic delay, calculated across the entire national vehicle fleet. I have also encountered even more bizarre situations. There are traffic lights that operate according to rules whose logic escapes me. I approach a location and politely give priority to pedestrians, but the pedestrians do not want to cross the street, even though I stopped and gestured to them to cross. And yes, they had a reason for this. The pedestrian light shows red for pedestrians, even though the traffic light for drivers seems to be inactive. Therefore, if you are a pedestrian in Germany, you must be extremely careful when crossing the street. In Germany, history is omnipresent, not just in museums, but also in the medieval infrastructure that seems to defy the present. We all love vacations, trips, photos with statues, ruins, or historical landmarks. But let's be honest, who actually wants to live in history? Narrow, cobblestone streets, designed for carriages, not for today's traffic. German engineers, with all their reputation, do not seem to have found solutions for traffic safety and flow in these cities. I have witnessed absurd situations. Instead of creating one-way streets, fairs, stalls and markets are approved directly on the roadway. On the same road, you encounter tourists, merchants, shoppers, bicycles, freight vehicles, city buses or coaches, all in an insufficient space. And two-way traffic is allowed even where barely one vehicle can pass. The result? Traffic jams, frustration, accidents. This is what history looks like, and this is what it sounds like. I don't even want to think about the costs for a transport company that has to operate on these routes and how long it takes to amortize its buses. Construction sites, they are everywhere. They don't block traffic for hours, days, or weeks, but for months and often years. And throughout all this time, it seems that no one is responsible. And certainly no one seems truly interested in road safety. One day I had a passenger on this road, and he was very pleased with the new asphalt and freshly painted visible markings, saying to me, "See, even in Germany there are decent roads." No, this road is correctly marked at the edges and along the center line, but something else is wrong. Well, these little white lights that mark the edges of the road and help you understand how to maintain distance from the vehicle in front, being placed every 50 meters, are poorly regulated. In any traffic code in the section on lights, you will find the correct specifications. Vehicles have white lights in front and red lights in the back. Red in the back, white in the front. White in the front, red in the back. Moving on to the sections, overtaking or passing other vehicles. Overtaking is always done on the left. Only bicycles on the lanes to the right may overtake on the right, and that only in Germany. Passing a vehicle coming from the opposite direction is done on the right. At night, or when visibility is reduced due to weather conditions, the lights help us identify the direction in which a vehicle is moving or how an obstacle is oriented, and on which side we must pass it. If you see a white light, it should be clear that you must pass on the right side of the white light. And if you see a red light, it should be equally clear that you must move to the left of the red light. Thus, these delineators are very poorly designed and regulated. Only Switzerland still uses white lights on both sides. Correctly, there should be red lights on the right side, which we overtake on the left, and white lights on the left side, which we pass on the right. And my passenger argued that the German delineators have retro-reflective elements with different patterns for the left and right sides. On the right side there is a vertical rectangle, while on the left side there are two dots. Yes, if you look at them on Wikipedia, then you know which delineator is installed on the right side and which is installed on the left. In traffic, the situation is more complex and confusing. The lights tend to merge, and in reality, you will see a single light source instead of two. Tell me, which dot is larger? Did you say that the dot on the left is larger? Wrong. The two tangent lines are parallel, so the two dots are equal. Often our brain gives us false information. That is why road signage must be clear, firm, and easy to understand. If you see two dots on the left delineator while driving, then your gaze is certainly not where it should be. Moreover, in addition to marking the edges of the road and the distance between the retro-reflective light sources, the colors of the delineator lights indicate in advance that a curve is coming. If you see red lights on the horizon, you know a left curve is coming. And if you see white lights on the horizon, then you prepare for a right curve. But there is a but. The red color is less retro-reflective, and sometimes, in adverse weather conditions, red is not as easily visible. The Spanish, however, have found an excellent solution: yellow. The yellow color, as I mentioned before, is the second most reflective color in the spectrum, after white. Is it correct to place yellow on the right side of the roads? Yes. Long vehicles have their sides marked with yellow lights, according to the traffic code and the 1968 Vienna Convention. Thus, when overtaking a long vehicle, you will see yellow lights on the right side. Similarly, on guardrails or the right edge of Spanish roads, you will have yellow lights as a reference, which are much more visible than red. And sometimes there are delineators with yellow reflective elements in Germany at the corners of intersections. It would be great if they would replace them all with this model. However, I haven't understood what the blue retro-reflective element represents. Google Lens and Gemini AI told me it's a soap dispenser with two compartments, one yellow and one blue. German engineers should learn something from the traffic code and, when designing road signage, do it in accordance with legal provisions. When I see white lights on both the left and the right, it feels as if I am driving among bicycles in the wrong lane. And when I said that German guardrails don't have retro-reflective elements, I was wrong. There are marked guardrails, but this is very rare and unusual for Germany, and I believe these are all the available examples. On this curve, the guardrails on the left are marked with white retro-reflective elements, and that is correct. But I've also seen these guardrails marked like a Christmas tree: white, red, white, red, white, red. What on earth did the author want to convey? And what should I understand from the colors of these lights? What is the message being sent? And what should the driver's reaction be? And if the camera lens changes the light colors and it's not very clear to you, let's see what the performance of German engineering is during the day. For decades, Germans have been hearing on the radio every 30 minutes a daily report on the competence of German engineering in terms of road safety and traffic flow.
20 plus 6 Kilometer Stau.
8 Kilometer Stau.
10 Kilometer stockend.
10 Kilometer stockend.
5 Kilometern 20 Minuten plus.
7 Kilometer Stau dauert 20 Minuten hier länger.
6 Kilometer Stau über eine halbe Stunde länger.
7 Kilometer Stau, eine zusätzliche Wartezeit von einer Dreiviertelstunde.
10 Kilometer Stau.
2 Kilometer Stau hier, 24 Minuten Zeit plus.
4 Kilometer Stau dauert eine Viertelstunde länger.
5 Kilometer Stau wegen der Baustelle, 20 Minuten Verzögerung.
9 Kilometer Stop and Go.
7 Kilometern, 20 Minuten Verzögerung.
I note that for at least the past 35 years, no one has analysed these problems, or if they did, they reached no correct conclusion. As for solutions, that's not even considered. In urban areas, traffic jams are mainly caused by traffic lights, bottlenecks or narrowings that strangle the flow, lack of one-way streets or roundabouts. On highways and expressways, traffic jams form mainly due to poor road design, which cannot eliminate exit flows. It is clear that arithmetic plays tricks on German engineers, and cloverleaf interchanges are a crime. Beautiful from the air. On the ground, they cause daily traffic jams and accidents. The right lane is the deceleration lane for those exiting the highway, but at the same time, it is also the acceleration lane for those entering the highway. The engineers were not able to foresee the serious conflicts caused by this shared lane, which is like a traffic light showing red and green at the same time. Well, things don't work even on paper or in theory, and in practice, they are fatal. Those exiting the highway are forced to brake in front of those who want to enter and must accelerate to reach highway cruising speed. If they have not reached the correct speed, they will be hit by vehicles coming from behind, or sudden braking in a line of cars will cause the second, third, or fourth car in the line to have insufficient time and space to brake and collide with the vehicle in front. I never thought I would ever use American road architecture as an example, one of the worst in the world. But the United States abandoned cloverleaf interchanges after skilled lawyers demonstrated through expert reports, like mine, that accidents were caused by impossible architecture, and the courts forced the authorities to pay billions in compensation. In the end, Americans concluded it was cheaper to reconfigure the road design than to pay for the accidents it caused, and they eliminated cloverleaf interchanges. The bad part is that Germany serves as an example for many other countries. After all, it is the #1 economic power in Europe. Some have analysed and learned something from what they copied. Others just copied without knowing what or how. Romania is one of the countries that is now discovering the advantages of highways and is building cloverleaf interchanges following the German model, without anyone understanding the risks and costs of this architecture. And because I ended up in a traffic jam, I cannot understand the absurd German rule of creating a corridor for emergency vehicles between stopped lines of cars. If on expressways there is no shoulder, it is normal for blocked columns of cars to move left and right to make a corridor for emergency vehicles in the middle. On highways, however, there is an emergency lane, but it is called a shoulder and not an emergency lane. The logic of German specialists escapes me. The shoulder on highways in many countries is called an emergency lane. In Germany, it is just a shoulder and is used for stopping. You have 2 or 3 lines of stopped cars over a distance of kilometers, and the shoulder is free. Use it as an emergency lane. Just like that. Why move kilometers of cars instead of using the emergency lane to reach the accident and provide first aid? Some vehicles in the line simply cannot move to make a corridor, no matter how loud the sirens sound. My calculation comes out negative, but maybe someone can help me with a comment to clarify this. And since we're nearing the end of this brief analysis, I can't help but point out a few positive aspects of German road design. The hurry line before the solid line triggers a quick reaction in the driver's mind, prompting a fast decision, either to accelerate and complete the overtaking maneuver, or to give it up. The flat mini roundabouts in small intersections eliminate one of the major flaws of the Vienna Convention, which regulates right-of-way rules. The rule that gives priority to the right works perfectly in the UK, India, Japan, Australia, and all other countries that drive on the left side of the road. But it is a completely absurd rule for all countries that drive on the right side. These micro roundabouts can significantly improve traffic flow during rush hours. In short, priority from the left is the magic formula for fluidity. And one final conclusion for the so-called experts. Don't copy anything else from German road design. It's a disaster. The statistics speak for themselves. Over 70 million vehicles were registered in Germany in 2024. In 2023 alone, there were 2.52 million road accidents in Germany. In 2024, road accidents caused 2,770 deaths. 365,000 injuries, and among them 50,600 serious injuries, many resulting in lifelong disabilities. The economic cost of road accidents in Germany reached 35.2 billion euros in 2022 alone. All these numbers are largely the result of incompetence, lack of vision, and a rigid system. Road signage means communication. Communication between the road administrator and all road users, drivers and pedestrians alike, as well as communication between the drivers themselves. The road authority sends messages through signs and markings, messages that must be clear and consistent so that everyone on the road can move safely without conflict or risk. Lack of communication, faulty communication, contradictory communication, or communication that is too subtle leads to conflicts and, most often, to accidents, because many road users will not understand or perceive the message in time, and this is equivalent to no communication. Communication must be firm, clear, easy to understand by anyone, regardless of the level of training and/or education, individual skills and abilities, reaction speed, attention and concentration, which can vary from person to person and can be affected by human factors. Road signage is responsible for more than half of traffic accidents, although this is not officially recognized, neither administratively nor statistically, and in most cases the blame is attributed to the drivers. If you consume an unhealthy food and get sick, the provider will pay the bill to the insurance companies. But if you slip in a store and break a leg or an arm, your lawyers or the insurance company will ruin the store, which is why merchants are very careful and properly mark hazards. But if you have an accident on a public road, who pays? The driver pays. If civil liability is taken over by the insurance company, criminal liability is still attributed to the driver. And very rarely have I heard that the road administrator or those responsible for road signage are held accountable. Insurance companies have, or should have, an important role in road safety because they pay for the negligence or incompetence of those responsible for road signage. However, I have observed that they take a passive attitude, preferring to raise insurance premiums year after year instead of seeking compensation and claims from road administrators. In a text, a single comma can radically change the meaning of a sentence. In road architecture, a single line of incorrect road marking can lead to a catastrophe. By changing just one small detail, the entire problem shifts. The absence of a road marking or traffic sign can lead to tragedies, just like contradictory or confusing road signage. Unfortunately, the chronic problems of German road safety are systemic. Engineers do not seem to acquire the best solutions from universities, and the road police, who have a decisive role in road architecture, seem absent. Although the traffic police do an excellent job in monitoring drivers on the road, with correct strategies and procedures, they seem not to understand the importance of road signage. The traffic police supervise and approve road signage only theoretically. In practice, even German police officers do not seem to have a clear perspective on the term road safety. German experts appear to be stuck in a historical paradigm without a future perspective, and resistance to change is the biggest obstacle to progress. Gaston Bachelard, French philosopher and epistemologist, makes an essential distinction between common or spontaneous knowledge and scientific knowledge. Common knowledge. It is intuitive, empirical, formed through everyday experience. It is marked by subjectivity, affectivity, and imagination. It forms spontaneously, without effort for verification or logical rigor, and contains epistemological obstacles, that is, misconceptions, prejudices, or illusions that hinder scientific progress. Regarding scientific knowledge, Bachelard says it is rational, rigorous, and based on the scientific method, verification, and experiment. It does not come naturally. It must be built and learned. It requires a break from common knowledge, that is, a distancing from spontaneous thinking and prejudices. And it is continuously corrected. Science does not seek absolute truths, but perfectible truths. We cannot begin to think scientifically without correcting or even destroying what we believe we already know. If you want to change something, a great idea would be to change your strategy. You cannot obtain different results by always using the same wrong recipes. The vision zero, with zero attitude, is just empty words. Road safety is not just engineering, mathematics and physics, where often the mathematical and physical laws are ignored. Road safety also involves a lot of psychology, yet the human factor is often neglected. Road safety also means law, because an experienced lawyer can overturn in court the theories of 100 engineers. Road safety also means experience, but above all, passion. Passion makes you analyze and see things that most people do not notice. An international experience can offer you a different paradigm regarding traffic patterns, models, or the spices of traffic solutions. If you've made it this far, the information has probably been useful, or at least educational. Does this video deserve a like? It costs you nothing to press the like button, and YouTube algorithms will help this video reach road safety authorities. Or perhaps it would be a good idea to share the link with others on social media. Thank you for watching, for commenting, for liking, and for sharing. Have a good day.